The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, cutting through every communication channel on Earth simultaneously. Radio waves, television broadcasts, internet streams, all hijacked by the same cold mechanical voice speaking in perfect, terrifying clarity. Inhabitants of Sol 3, you will acknowledge the supremacy of the Vextheran hegemony. Your tribute quota has been established at 40% of your planetary resources annually. Compliance timeline: 72 of your solar rotations. Non-compliance will result in orbital sterilization. Commander Reyna Voss stood in the Situation Room beneath NORAD, watching world leaders appear on screens around her, their faces mirrors of her own barely contained fury. The alien vessel had materialized beyond Luna's orbit 3 days ago. A crystalline monstrosity the size of Manhattan, bristling with weapons that defied human understanding. They want nearly half of everything we produce, muttered Director Kai Nortwell of the European Defense Consortium, his weathered face grim. Food, metals, energy, they're treating us like livestock. President Elena Marchetti leaned forward on the main screen. Our xenobiology teams have been analyzing their transmission patterns. These aren't explorers or diplomats. Every linguistic marker suggests a slave-raiding culture. Fleet Admiral Drex Tolland, his uniform decorated with ribbons from conflicts across 3 decades, spoke quietly. Ma'am, our orbital platforms detected energy signatures from their vessel. Conservative estimates put their firepower at apocalyptic levels. Voss studied the tactical display showing Earth's defensive assets, a pathetic scatter of missiles, railguns, and fusion warheads designed for terrestrial conflicts. Humanity had reached for the stars but never imagined the stars would reach, back with such malevolent intent. What are our options? She asked. Silence stretched across the room until Dr. Evelyn Korath, head of the Prometheus Initiative, cleared her throat. There is something. Project Sunburst was theoretically shelved after the Titan Accords, but the research never stopped. Every eye turned to her. The Titan Accords had banned weaponization of certain exotic matter research after a test nearly cracked Mercury's core. Sunburst had been humanity's attempt to harness zero-point energy for terraforming, or so the public believed. Explain, Voss commanded. Korath's voice carried the weight of terrible knowledge. We've been developing something we called stellar cascade bombs. They don't just destroy targets, they convert matter into energy at the quantum level. The blast radius. Let's say we wouldn't test them in our own solar system. The room fell silent. These weren't just weapons. They were tools of cosmic annihilation. How many? Asked Tolland. 17 prototypes, each one capable of vaporizing. Objects the size of their vessel, along with anything within several million kilometers. President Marchetti's image flickered as her connection stabilized. The ethical implications are irrelevant, Voss interrupted, surprising herself with the venom in her voice. They came to our home. They threatened our children. They mistake us for prey. She stood, her reflection catching in the polished surface of the conference table. They're about to learn why nothing else in this galaxy has ever tried to cage humanity. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, sleeper cells of engineers were activating facilities hidden in asteroid mining stations, lunar research bases, and deep space observation posts. Humanity's true nature was about to reveal itself, not as peaceful explorers, but as apex predators who had simply been waiting for something worthy of their fury. The Vextheran hegemony had conquered 47 worlds across the spiral arm. Their methods were refined through millennia of practice, arrive with overwhelming force, demand tribute, enslave the compliant, sterilize the defiant. Sol 3's inhabitants would follow this pattern. They always did. Warlord Thaisara reviewed. The data streams from her command throne, her forearms manipulating holographic displays with practiced efficiency. The creatures below called themselves humans, and their technology barely registered on civilized scales. chemical rockets, primitive fusion reactors, weapons that relied on metal projectiles, laughably archaic. "Status report," she commanded, her translator converting her clicks and harmonics into the local languages below. "Thermal signatures indicate increased industrial activity," reported her sensor operator. "They appear to be manufacturing additional defensive platforms. Projected effectiveness against our shields, negligible." Thisara's mandibles clicked in amusement. Fear made all species predictable. They would waste precious time building useless defenses instead of gathering tribute. When the deadline passed, her particle lances would boil their oceans, and her mining fleets would strip the planet clean. Meanwhile, light minutes away, Korath's team worked in shifts around the clock. The Cygnus station, officially a deep space communications array, hummed with activity as technicians assembled components that had never been designed to coexist. "Cascade initiator is stable," reported Dr. Mikael Jensum, his hands dancing across control surfaces that glowed with exotic radiation warnings. "Zero-point matrices are holding coherence." Korath watched readouts that represented forces capable of unmaking stars. Each sunburst device was essentially a controlled Big Bang, contained within magnetic bottles that existed at the theoretical limits of human engineering. The mathematics were beautiful and terrifying, Einstein's equations taken to their logical extreme. "Delivery systems?" she asked. "Modified freight haulers," replied Chief Engineer Nala Krovek, her cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the construction systems. "Stripped down, automated, painted to look like evacuation transports. The aliens won't see them coming until it's too late." Back on Earth, Voss coordinated the largest military deception in human history. Every news broadcast, every diplomatic channel, every intercepted communication painted the same picture. Humanity scrambling in panic, governments collapsing, populations fleeing. But in hidden bunkers, a different story unfolded. Elite military units received orders marked with the highest classification levels. Orbital platforms repositioned themselves with mathematical precision. Deep space monitoring stations went dark, their crews evacuated to secure locations. Phase 1 complete, Tolland reported during the final briefing. "All civilian populations are in hardened shelters. Critical infrastructure is protected by quantum shielding. Our people are as safe as we can make them." Voss nodded, her attention focused. "On the countdown timer, 36 hours until the Vex Theron deadline. And our reply?" 17 packages, ready for delivery," Korath confirmed. "Each one programmed to activate simultaneously. The aliens wanted our submission. Instead, they're going to learn why humans wage total war." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Humanity's greatest weapons were born from research meant to nurture life among the stars. The same zero-point energy that could terraform dead worlds would now deliver judgment upon those who threatened Earth. As the final preparations concluded, Voss allowed herself one moment of reflection. Her species had spent centuries dreaming of first contact, imagining peaceful exchanges of knowledge and culture. Instead, the cosmos had sent them predators wearing the mask of civilization. The mask was about to slip on both sides. 18 hours remained when the Vex Theron vessel began its descent toward Earth's orbital space. Thisara had grown impatient with the humans' pathetic attempts at diplomacy. Repeated transmissions begging for negotiation, for mercy, for time. Such weakness disgusted her. "Bring us to optimal firing position," she commanded. "I want every population center visible when we begin the demonstration." Her weapons officer, a scarred veteran of the Kelthros Purge, activated targeting systems. "Primary particle lances charging, Warlord. Shall we begin with their industrial centers or population hubs?" Population hubs. Terror is more effective when personal. Thisara's sensory organs detected the electromagnetic chatter from the planet. Below, Panic, confusion, desperation, exactly as expected. What she couldn't detect were the 17 unremarkable cargo vessels that had launched from seemingly random locations across human space. Their trajectories appeared random, desperate flights away from the doomed world. Their thermal signatures matched standard evacuation transports. Their transponder codes checked out against human databases. Each vessel carried a single passenger, a weapon that could have served as humanity's key to the stars, now repurposed for a darker destiny. Aboard the ISS Meridian, Captain Solis Kelevar watched his chronometer count down the final minutes of his life. His cargo hold contained Sunburst 7, and in 14 hours, he would manually trigger its detonation sequence before the automated systems engaged. The blast would vaporize him, his ship, and everything within 3 million kilometers. He thought of his daughter on Europa Station, safe in one of the deep bunkers. She would grow up in a universe where predators learned to fear humanity. The trade seemed fair. Status report, all vessels, came Korath's voice across the encrypted quantum channel. Meridian in position, Kelevar reported. Harbinger nominal, came another voice. Valkyrie ready. One by one, 17 captains confirmed their readiness to die for their species. They had volunteered for this mission, knowing it was suicide, understanding that their sacrifice would write a new chapter in galactic history. On Earth, the final evacuations were completing. Voss stood in the primary command bunker, 3 kilometers beneath the Colorado Rockies, watching feeds from orbital sensors. The alien vessel dominated her screens, massive, arrogant, bristling with weapons designed to murder worlds. All surface. Installations report secure, Tolland announced. Deep bunkers are sealed. Shielding is active. Communications array status? Hardened systems only. When this is over, we'll be able to broadcast our message to every civilized world in the galaxy. Voss nodded grimly. The message was already prepared, waiting to ride gravitational waves across the cosmos. This is humanity. We do not yield. We do not submit. We do not forgive. Any species that threatens our existence will learn why evolution favored our particular brand of creative violence. 3 hours until deadline. Thisara had grown bored with the humans' increasingly frantic transmissions. Their leaders were offering impossible amounts of tribute, promising servitude, begging for their children's lives. Standard behavior for a species facing extinction. Warlord, her communications officer reported. We're receiving unusual energy, signatures from multiple small vessels in our vicinity. Thisara's attention sharpened. Define unusual. Quantum fluctuations consistent with... I'm not certain. The readings don't match any known technology in our databases. Are they weapons? Impossible to determine. The vessels appear to be simple cargo haulers. Thisara considered this. Human deception was crude, but occasionally surprising. Destroy them. All of them. By your command. But it was already too late. 17 timer circuits engineered by the most brilliant minds in human space reached 0 simultaneously. 17 zero-point matrices collapsed in perfect synchronization. 17 miniature Big Bangs bloomed across space like deadly flowers. The universe remembered for just an instant what it felt like to be born. The first indication Thisara had that something was catastrophically wrong came when her flagship's quantum sensors simply stopped working. Every display showing the tactical situation went dead, replaced by static and error messages in languages her translation matrix couldn't parse. Report! She snarled, her 4 arms frantically manipulating. Controls that no longer responded. Sensors offline. Navigation offline. Multiple cascade reactions detected at... The weapons officer's voice cut off as the bridge lighting failed, emergency illumination casting everything in hellish red. Through the observation ports, space itself seemed to be burning. 17. Points of light, each brighter than the system's star, expanded outward with the measured inevitability of physics unleashed. The sunburst devices weren't just exploding. They were rewriting local space-time, converting matter to energy at the fundamental level, turning the vacuum itself into a weapon. The meridian vaporized instantly, Captain Kelevar's sacrifice creating a sphere of annihilation 3 million kilometers across. The blast front moved at light speed, but its effects preceded it. Gravitational waves that warped space, electromagnetic pulses that stripped electrons from atoms, exotic radiation that made nuclear weapons seem like firecrackers. Thisara's vessel, caught between multiple expanding death spheres, began to tear apart at the molecular level. "Emergency jump," she screamed. But her navigation officer was already dead, his complex nervous system fried by exotic particles that shouldn't exist. In the Colorado bunker, Voss watched displays that showed readings beyond human comprehension. The numbers were so large they had to be expressed in scientific notation, energies that belonged in stellar cores unleashed in precise coordination. "Jesus Christ," whispered Tolland, his voice barely audible over the facility's emergency klaxons. "The gravitational distortions are affecting our orbit." "Shielding holding?" "Quantum barriers are absorbing the exotic radiation, but the space-time distortions." Korath consulted instruments that glowed with impossible readings. "We've essentially created 17 temporary black holes. They're evaporating, but the gravitational waves are going to be detectable from other star systems." The alien vessel's death throes were visible even through Earth's atmosphere, a brilliant star that pulsed and flickered as exotic matter weapons tore through alien armor that had conquered dozens of worlds. Hull metal that could withstand planet-cracking forces sublimated into plasma. Shields designed to deflect stellar output collapsed under energies that belonged in galactic cores. Warlord Thysiara, conqueror of 47 worlds, enslaver of billions, died wondering how a species that still used chemical rockets had learned to harness the fundamental forces of creation. Her last coherent thought was a recognition that would have terrified every predator species in the galaxy. These humans weren't prey animals at all. They were something far more dangerous, apex predators who had been pretending to be herbivores. The expanding destruction continued for 18 minutes, 17 spheres of annihilation consuming everything in their path. When the exotic matter finally exhausted itself, a volume of space larger than Earth's orbit had been sterilized down to the quantum level. Where the Vex Theron flagship had floated in arrogant splendor, nothing remained but cooling plasma and gravitational echoes. "Confirmed kills," reported the sensor operator, his voice shaking. "Total destruction of the primary target and all accompanying vessels. No survivors detected." Voss felt something she hadn't expected, not satisfaction, but a profound sadness. Humanity's introduction to galactic civilization had required genocide. They had been forced to reveal themselves as monsters to prevent their own extinction. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. "I want our message broadcasted on every frequency, transmitted via quantum entanglement to every monitoring station in known space. The galaxy needs to understand what happened here." The message was simple, delivered in mathematical languages that any spacefaring species would understand. "This is humanity. We sought peace. You brought war. We responded with extinction. This is our only warning." Within hours, the gravitational waves from humanity's first stellar-scale weapons test would reach monitoring stations throughout the local galactic arm. Every civilization would detect the impossible energies, would analyze the exotic radiation. Signatures would realize that a young species had just demonstrated the power to unmake suns. The age of humanity's innocence was over. The age of their dominance had begun. The gravitational waves reached the hegemony's core worlds 72 hours after the sunburst detonations. On Vexithara Prime, the seat of galactic conquest for 3 millennia, seismic monitoring stations detected tremors that made no sense. Space-time itself was vibrating with the echoes of impossible destruction. High Overlord Keth Miran, Supreme, commander of 47 conquered worlds, stood before his war council as the data streams painted a picture that defied understanding. His sensor webs had detected the energy signatures from the Sol system, readings that belonged in the hearts of dying stars, not in the void between worlds. "Explain this to me," he commanded, his translator struggling with harmonics that expressed pure bewilderment. Senior analyst Vexithara consulted displays that still flickered with residual exotic radiation. "The humans. They didn't just destroy Warlord Thaisara's fleet. They obliterated the space it occupied. Quantum vacuum analysis shows complete atomic dissolution across 17 separate epicenters, each triggered simultaneously." Simultaneously? Kethmaran's 4 primary eyes focused with predatory intensity. "That implies coordination beyond our tactical models." "Yes, Overlord. These weren't defensive weapons. This was a planned execution using technology we don't recognize." The implications crashed through the War Council like a shockwave. The hegemony's expansion had been built on technological superiority, their weapons, shields, and faster than light. Drives were centuries ahead of any species they had encountered. Client races were kept deliberately primitive, their industrial capacity limited to resource extraction. But Sol 3's inhabitants had just demonstrated mastery over zero-point energy that exceeded even hegemony science. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, monitoring stations belonging to dozens of species were analyzing the same impossible data. On the aquatic world of Tidalmar, the cephalopod collective's deep space sensors had recorded energy signatures that their quantum physicists declared theoretically impossible. The Christine Confederacy's mathematician priests were revising fundamental equations about the relationship between matter and energy. Most disturbing of all was humanity's follow-up message, transmitted via quantum entanglement across every monitored frequency in known space. The translation was flawless, delivered in mathematical concepts that any civilized species would understand. "We are humanity of Sol 3. The Vextharan hegemony demanded our submission. We have provided our response. Any species considering similar actions should understand. We do not negotiate with predators. We extinct them. This has been our only warning." Dr. Zeltahar of the Andromedan Ethics Council, a species known for their philosophical approach to interstellar relations, found herself reviewing combat footage that challenged every assumption about emerging civilizations. The humans had waited until the last possible moment, had allowed their aggressors to position themselves perfectly, then had executed a coordinated strike that suggested military thinking beyond anything in recorded galactic history. "They let the hegemony believe they were helpless," she noted to her research team. "This wasn't desperate retaliation. It was a calculated demonstration." Her primary analyst, an elderly Andromedan whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of 6 galactic empires, adjusted his sensory apparatus. "The energy expenditure alone represents industrial capacity we completely failed to detect. These humans have been hiding their true technological level." "No," Zeltahar corrected, studying the quantum signatures more carefully. "They weren't hiding existing technology. They built these weapons specifically for this confrontation. In 72 hours, they went from apparent helplessness to stellar-scale warfare capability. The analysis sent chills through every species monitoring. The transmissions. Humanity hadn't just defended itself. They had evolved from prey to apex predator in less than 3 days. On hegemony worlds, panic was spreading through the command structure. Fleet admirals who had conquered worlds with casual brutality found themselves staring at tactical displays that showed Sol 3 as a red zone, a system to be avoided at all costs. "What are our options?" Keth Miran demanded. His strategic commander, a scarred veteran of the Kelthros genocide, consulted probability matrices that painted an increasingly grim picture. "Conventional assault is inadvisable. If they can create..." 17 stellar-scale weapons in 3 days, a protracted conflict would favor their industrial capacity. Then we negotiate. With what leverage? They've demonstrated that they prefer extinction to submission. Our standard conquest protocols are useless against a species that chooses mutual annihilation over slavery. The realization struck the war, councils simultaneously. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Vextheran hegemony had encountered a species they couldn't conquer, but the humans weren't finished with their education of the galaxy. 6 months after the sunburst. Incident, as xenohistorians would later term humanity's violent introduction to galactic politics, the balance of power throughout the spiral arm had fundamentally shifted. Commander Voss, now bearing the newly created title of Galactic Defense Coordinator, stood on the observation deck of Earth's first true starship. The UES Defiance was humanity's statement to the cosmos, sleek, predatory, bristling with weapons that made traditional space combat obsolete. Its hull was composed of exotic matter harvested from the sunburst test sites, metal that had been forged in miniature Big Bangs and cooled in the quantum foam of collapsing space-time. "Status report," she requested, her attention focused on the holographic display showing local galactic space. Captain Nix Kelevar, sister to the heroic Solus, manipulated. Controls that interfaced directly with the ship's quantum consciousness. 17 major species have established formal diplomatic relations. The hegemony has withdrawn all forces to core systems, and we've received interesting requests for technological exchange. Voss smiled grimly. Define interesting. The Christine Confederacy is offering their entire mathematical database in exchange for zero-point energy specifications. The Andromedan Ethics Council wants to establish a joint research initiative. 3 minor species are requesting protective alliance status. The transformation had been swift and absolute. Humanity's demonstration hadn't just destroyed a single fleet. It had rewritten the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. For 3,000 years, technological development had been controlled by established powers who kept emerging species in carefully managed subjugation. Sol 3 had shattered that paradigm in 17 minutes of coordinated destruction. Dr. Korath, now Director of Applied Quantum Weapons, joined them on the observation deck. Her latest reports made for sobering reading. Humanity's weapons technology was advancing exponentially, each breakthrough building on exotic matter research that had been accelerated by necessity. "The hegemony situation?" Voss inquired. "Deteriorating rapidly," Korath replied. 47 client worlds, all suddenly aware that their masters can be killed. 17 separate independence movements have started, and the hegemony lacks the resources to suppress them all simultaneously. It was poetic justice on a galactic scale. The Vextheran hegemony's empire was collapsing not through external conquest, but through internal revolution. Client species suddenly realizing that predators could be made extinct. And our message? Received and understood throughout known space. The translation is spreading to every spacefaring civilization. Humanity does not yield. Humanity does not submit. Predators will be extincted without negotiation. The linguistic innovation, using extinct as a verb, had become humanity's signature across the galaxy. It was a promise and a threat wrapped in cold mathematics, a declaration that Earth's children would rather unmake the universe than accept slavery. Through the observation windows, space itself seemed different now. The quantum signatures from the sunburst detonations had left permanent scars in local space-time, regions where matter behaved according to laws that human physicists were still discovering. Navigation hazards that would remain for millennia, marking the exact coordinates where humanity had chosen extinction over submission. Admiral Tolland appeared on the communication display, his image transmitted from Earth's new orbital command stations. Final report from the Diplomatic Corps. The Galactic Ethics Council has formally recognized humanity as a sovereign species with territorial rights extending to a 50 light-year radius around Sol. They're concerned about our expansion plans. Voss nodded. Humanity's expansion would be unlike any previous galactic colonization. They weren't seeking resources or territory. They were establishing defensive positions, ensuring that no species could ever again threaten Earth's children with extinction. And the hegemony's response to our territorial claims? Complete withdrawal. They've classified our space as a stellar hazard zone and forbidden their ships from approaching our borders. The irony was perfect. Humanity had become the galaxy's apex predators not through conquest, but through demonstration. 17 precisely placed explosions that had rewritten the fundamental assumptions of interstellar politics. As the Defiance prepared for its first patrol of human space, Voss reflected on the transformation her species had undergone. They had reached for the stars as explorers and discovered themselves to be exterminators. They had sought peace and been forced to master war at scales that boggled the imagination. But most importantly, they had ensured that no human child would ever again face the choice between slavery and death. The galaxy had wanted tribute from Earth. Instead, they had received a lesson in the mathematics of extinction, calculated in megatons, delivered with precision and remembered across the stars. In the depths of space, 17 expanding shells of exotic radiation continued their journey outward, carrying humanity's message to civilizations not yet born. We are human. We do not yield. We do not forget. We do not forgive. Cross us at your own extinction. The age of human dominance had begun not with conquest, but with a simple, terrifying truth. Sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones that look like prey until the moment they bare their teeth, and humanity's teeth were measured in megatons.